You're ready to actually implement those actions, which means you need a central place for your team to be able to see what needs to be completed for this project. Now, we can use something traditional like an Excel action item list that I'm going to show you today, but if there's something else your organization is used to using, Kanban boards, Trello, Jira, anything from your project management toolbook, feel free to use that as well. Use what works for you and what your team is familiar with. Now, if you're a project manager, you've got all of these tools in your tool set already, and this should be a place where you thrive. So let's talk, though, just a few things that we want to make sure that we do with our action item list. So one, we want to make sure that we're always very specific in what we want the person to do. Be very specific about the action that you want them to take. You may even think about what is your definition of done? What is the deliverable that you want to see? Now, each of these actions, generally we want to see movement on each week. So you should chunk them down about that size. Each action should be able to be completed in a week or two. That would be the goal. We want to always make sure that there is a deadline. So if we've assigned an action, it should have a due date. Now we're going to be meeting weekly to check in on these. So if that due date is associated with one of those meetings, that helps because that means, hey, in 2 weeks, we're going to meet and we're going to want to see the results of that action item. We want to make sure that there is no confusion about who owns and is accountable for each of these actions. As a result, we want to make sure that we put one project owner, one action item owner. So rather than listing several people as owning a specific action, we want that to only be one person. And I challenge you to even take that a little bit further and think about that in terms of position title. This is something that position title owns, right? So you may put a name on there, but eventually as we move to our control plan, we're going to be thinking about position titles. So one owner per action. Now that person can be the point person, they can update everybody else, but they are going to be the central person that you ask how that project action is going. We want to always link back to the root cause. So if you're able in whatever tool that you're using to make sure that you have some kind of link or highlight there to the root cause, that helps make sure that that action actually does what you want. Sometimes when we start doing these actions, we go in a slightly different direction and the root cause can be missed. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about, if I do these actions, is that actually going to address the root cause that we're talking about? Now, at each check-in, you also want to have a spot for accountability, for note-taking, so that you can update maybe a comment section and say, this is what's actually going on. This helps everybody else see the dialogue, but also holds that person accountable, so there's some kind of update there, even if they haven't finished that action. And then when you want to move an action to complete, you want to make sure that you do that at these check-ins. So you're not going to move that post-it over, or you're not going to mark that complete until the whole team has said, yes, we agree. Now, if you're using the Excel sheet that we're going to look at in just a moment, then you can see I actually have a spot that makes it easy for you to do that. So let's take a look at the action item template. So for this action item template, I use the example that we've been using throughout this class of an oil change, right? We have a maintenance shop that it's taking too long for them to complete oil changes. And so what we've done is we've done a project to really understand what that looks like. And then now we have to identify those actions. And so if we look here, you can see I've listed the root cause on the side. So we can see that we have this issue of too many cars coming in each day. Right? And so whatever actions we take, we're taking those actions to address that root cause. Now, if we jump in there, we can see that the action identified and agreed to by the team when we did our impact and effort was to move to an appointment scheduling system. Now, eventually they want to move to an electronic scheduling system. And so these are the actions that are in there. See if it's possible to move to the electronic. Begin accepting appointments, because you don't need the electronic system to necessarily have appointments, and announce to our customers that only those with appointments will get the 30-minute guarantee that we have on our oil changes. Now, what this misses is limiting the number of cars per day, which would be the intent of this to address the too many cars. So we may need to actually add another action here, or make sure that there's some kind of understanding from the team that one of the actions that will come up is actually limiting the number of cars that come in if they don't have an appointment. What is the system that we have for turning people away? Right? So this might help us to level load, but we also need something to help us with our WIP limits. Now you can see each of those has one owner for that too many cars root cause. Those actions, all of those actions are owned by Sarah, our office manager. We've also started to assign priorities so that we can see this from high, medium, and low. Now we already had one meeting to be able to assign a few of these actions. We weren't able to assign them all because we want to be cognizant of people's schedules and how much time they have to actually execute these improvements. And so each person took one or two actions, and then we said we're going to wait until next week and get the update on those. And so what we can do as we start our next meeting, we can sort these from high to low priority. So now we know which of these is highest priority and lowest priority, but we can also go in and sort this by due on. So now we have it by highest priority and by due date. This allows us to see those actions that have already been assigned that we have to get updates on next time, but also what's the next action that we need to assign. So you can see here the next action that we would want to assign is that appointments is to announce only appointments that have that only those that have an appointment will get the 30-minute guarantee. Right, and so we're able to also see here that we have a few actions. If we wanted to go for that one, number 2 has to be completed. So we have to complete this action item before we can start doing this one. So this is something else that we can kind of identify now is those dependencies, right? And that can help us really focus in our actions on the things that we can move forward. Now there's another tool which will help with this, which is the Gantt chart, which we'll go over in a few minutes. The final thing, or the last two things that I want to highlight here, are the comments. Now each week what we can do is we can go ahead and add a comment. We can put in maybe the initials of somebody that we're working with or the one that gave the update, and then we can say, what did they tell us? Now next week, if we go above that, next week we can Alt-Enter, and we can go in and add the newest update. So this is just a way that we can drive accountability with our team to get a little visibility into each week. We know we're going to update this action item, even if you haven't completed it. Now to move it to complete, as we said, we want to make sure that the whole team agrees that it's complete. And one of the ways that we can subtly reinforce that is ask for documentation. So we're going to move this to complete. You've said that you established, this action is established 3 tiers of oil changes with different guaranteed times, right? So right now, all the actions that we have for the 30-minute oil change, it's too much. We can't achieve it within the time that we've given ourselves. So we're going to come up with 3 tiers. And that way, people that get maybe the premium oil change, they know that theirs might take an hour, but people that get the speedy oil change, theirs is going to be 30 minutes, and we're not going to have to do so much with that one, but the client will know that. They'll choose which one's right for them. Now, if we establish those 3 tiers, is there any documentation? Where can I see that? Can you show it to me? Can you send me the link or the file? This is what we'll ask our team member, and then we can link it there in this column J, and that will help us to establish that this is actually completed and there's documentation that supports that. So that's just a subtle way for you to drive accountability in your actions. So in this phase, what we're doing in Improve is we're validating that a change has occurred. But to do that, we have to identify the improvements, implement the improvements, and then we can validate that. So the action item list really helps us to organize this information and drive the accountability we need to close out this project so that we can move on to the next opportunity.